The concept of hell is perhaps the most horrifying reality that you can think of. Imagine a place where time stays still, where you can never escape torment. If such a place like that really existed, would people be more afraid of dying? And could you really ever enjoy life again, knowing what was inevitable? So, sorry about getting a little dark and depressing there, but it is a concept that's always just fascinated me. And I'm just surprised that there's not more horror movies or stories about it or taking place in it. You know, if you want nightmare fuel, that's it. But the few films I've seen having to do with that are some of my favorites. So The Inferno is a 1979 Japanese horror film, and it's loosely a remake of the 1960 film JIGOKU. And JIGOKU was also remade in 1999, which I still have yet to watch. But for me, the original 1960 JIGOKU is just a classic. It's amongst the best in the Japanese horror genre, and it's usually on every top 10 list. And, you know, for good reason. And it's really a film that's only known for its last act, which is probably the most horrific depiction of hell ever put to screen. And just the effects in that movie are still incredible by today's standards. And just because of that, the amount of work that was probably put into some of these hell sets really should be award-winning. Honestly, they should really re-release that in 4K in the IMAX. You know, forget Jaws, I want to see JIGOKU in the IMAX. But JIGOKU's funny because besides the hell stuff, it's really just a rather standard horror setup. But what's great about the remake, The Inferno, is that instead of just doing a shot-for-shot remake of the original, they actually do an entirely different story and concepts. And really, in the end, it pays off. And I've heard people say they like this one more than the original, and I may feel the same way myself. So the story itself begins with a character named Miho, played by Miyako Harada, and another character by the name of Ryuzo, played by Ken Nishida. And these two are adulterous lovers. And because of that, they're eventually hunted down by Miho's husband. Ryuzo is killed while the pregnant Miho is bludgeoned and left for dead. And as she dies, she gives birth to her daughter, Aki. And thus she is considered to have been born in hell. And then 20 years later, the character Aki, again, is actually played by Miyako Harada. And it's now modern times in Japan, and for some reason she's sort of become a daredevil race car driver. But she feels that strange forces are trying to kill her. And they are. Wherever she goes, she almost dies. And so to solve the mystery of her past, she returns to the remote village where her mother died, and also back to the dysfunctional family that refused to take care of Aki when she was just a baby. Aki's arrival triggers a series of disastrous events as she tries to take revenge for the murder of her mother. So this is basically a tale of the sins of the parents being, visited on the child. The tragedy of the now 20-year-old Aki just fearing that she has no identity of her own, besides just being a vehicle for her mother's revenge. And she resembles her mother more than she realizes, and soon discovers things like how she has some of her same talents. But what she also has is sort of a trance-like lust that bewitches men around her. But it's complicated by the fact that it doesn't always seem to be of her own will, and it's more so just a manifestation of her mother's curse. Thus she ends up doing things like sleeping with the nasty younger brother of the man that she actually likes, who also, in ironic fashion, is actually her half-brother. Also, everyone around her and fate itself seems to just want to kill her. So definitely some interesting concepts here. And I find this story interesting because it sort of reminds me of a Junji Ito story. It has some of the same sort of bewitching, concepts like Tomie. And it also has some Final Destination type death scenes, where like fate itself is just coming after you. And this is definitely a horror film. It has plenty of just grotesque imagery. But instead of just creating something gory like a typical splatter movie, it has a type of strange beauty to it that affects you more, I'll say, deeply. I'll say it's similar to the special effects in John Carpenter's The Thing. Very gross movie, but also beautiful in the sense of it really is just a skilled creation. But in the Inferno, the hell scenes are just a great example of that. I mean, it's definitely horrific. I'll even say that there's some things that even got to me, and I'm really used to these kind of films, so that's definitely saying something. And that was the meat grinder torture scene. They definitely did a good job at just making that look horrific. And it's not vague or anything, you know exactly what you're looking at, which is nice. A more unskilled director would probably make that scene and you wouldn't really know what you're looking at. And what I liked about the hell in this movie compared to JIGOKU is it really makes you feel more like this place existed from the beginning of time, and how no matter how much time goes on in reality, this time stays the same. And that's because you see images of these, Oni and, characters that would be in feudal Japan that you would see. So it gives it a real timeless feel. Like, this place is ancient, but no matter how far into the future we get, it'll still stay the same. And they did some really nice editing with some of the shots. Scenes like the spike torture, it definitely doesn't look beautifully pleasing to the eye, because if they made it aesthetically pleasing, it would ruin the effects. But there's also aspects like flowers that are obviously fake, so they add a dreamlike effect to the film. And it really makes me question, why are so many Japanese movies so dreamlike? Why are they so good at doing that? And honestly, I'm addicted to these movies. I just love the way they look. And it's gonna keep me coming back probably forever. And also too, the music is really good in this. It's just a lot of fun. There's just some very weird tracks that only Japanese movies can get away with. And I really like the beginning song. It's very reminiscent of a Quentin Tarantino movie. And the acting is really good in this, but Miyako Harada just steals the show. You gotta applaud her for playing two characters, and she plays them well. She just has such a feral energy to her, and we saw this with the movie Ron. Actually, I couldn't believe this was Lady Kaede from that, because she just seems so different in this. But she does have that same raw energy. And, as I said, there's just some really graphic hell scenes, so just be prepared for that. And there's actually a lot of sex scenes and just nudity. It's definitely more erotic than I probably would have liked, but, that's just what they were going for. So, just keep that in mind when you watch this. Could get awkward, depending on who you're watching it with. And luckily, this movie's really easy to get. It recently just released on Blu-ray by Mondo Macabro. Pretty randomly, It always fascinates me how they choose, which movies they're gonna bring back. And then more often than not, they're just random like this. And, I just love how we're getting releases now of these great hidden gems. For years, you really had to just look hard for these films. So I'm definitely excited to see what we get next. And there is some nice special features on the Blu-ray. You get 2 really good interviews that I recommend. Especially the interview with filmmaker Koji Shiraishi. I really enjoyed watching that one. Great director, I love all of his films. And I really do hope that he does a version of this film because it definitely sounds like he's interested in doing so. So overall, I definitely like this one. It's just visually powerful, grotesquely bloodthirsty, and also very erotic. But it is just filmed beautifully and just very surreal. And again, lead actress Miyako Harada definitely just does a great job in this. So overall, this is really just a remake in name only. If you didn't like JIGOKU, definitely watch this one because it is different. And I just like how it's very reminiscent of just a Junji Ito story. Just great, hellish atmosphere. Some really just deep concepts in this too. Anyway, which film do you enjoy? Do you like the original JIGOKU? Or do you like the Inferno? And has anyone seen the 1999 remake of JIGOKU? Let me know in the comments.